All right, the next one here. Trump administration launches crackdown on protests critical of Israel. So this is a very concerning story. I've been meaning to cover this angle for a while, and a lot of new things happened this week. So the Trump administration officials have announced measures to suppress protests on college campuses that are critical of Israel. Steps that have chilling implications for First Amendment rights. President Trump wrote on Truth Social that he would cut federal funding to colleges that allow illegal protests, is what he called them, and that's a reference to the student-led pro-Palestine demonstrations that have spread across the country in response to Israel's bombing campaign and siege on Gaza. The President Trump also threatened that agitators would be imprisoned or deported if they were foreign students. He said, quote, all federal funding will stop for any college, school, or university that allows illegal protests. Agitators will be imprisoned or permanently sent back to the country which they came. American students will be permanently expelled or, depending on the crime, arrested. No masks, end quote. So Eli Stefanik, Trump's nominee to be the ambassador to the UN, this woman led the charge against the protests in Congress. Now, she's still the nominee. She hasn't been confirmed yet, but I'm sure she's going to get confirmed. She celebrated Trump's announcement and acknowledged that the purpose of the order is to target protests against Israel. In Trump's statement, he didn't explicitly say Israel. He didn't even use the claim of anti-Semitism, which he has done in his executive order to crack down on this. But it's very clearly, this is what he's talking about. So this is what Stefanik said. She said, quote, under President Trump, colleges and universities will be held accountable. Anti-Semitism and anti-Israel hate will not be tolerated on American campuses. Promises made, promises kept, end quote. So you hear what she said there. She didn't just say anti-Semitism, which is the smear that this claim that these are anti-Semitic protests is ridiculous. But she's not even just saying that. She's also saying they're anti-Israel, and that anti-Israel hate will not be tolerated. Just completely ridiculous. Just a flagrant violation of the right to free speech in this country. And it's on behalf of a foreign power, on behalf of a foreign country. So Glenn Greenwald, who everybody knows, he explained in a video that he posted on X why cutting federal funding over political speech and protests is a violation of the First Amendment. Because you hear from people, oh, it's not like they have the right to the federal funding. And I especially hear this, from being a libertarian. This is what people always throw at me. But what Greenwald says here is important. So he said, and he's a constitutional lawyer for those who don't know. He said, quote, you can take the position that there should be no federal funding of universities, or there should be. That's independent of the free speech point. Once the federal government or any government decides to offer a benefit that's optional, it cannot then condition receipt of that benefit on your expressing a particular view, your affirming a particular view, or your refraining from expressing a political view. This is basic First Amendment doctrine, end quote. So this announcement from Trump came after a very bizarre statement from Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who's the Secretary of Health and Human Services, HHS. RFK Jr. is saying that HHS will be taking steps to combat anti-Semitism on college campuses in another directive aimed at pro-Palestinian protests. So I mentioned in the story, while both President Trump, Republicans, and President Biden did this as well, have labeled these protests anti-Semitic, many Jewish students are involved, or organizations are involved in these demonstrations. So it's just completely absurd. So HHS, again, Kennedy's agency, said in a press release that it, along with the Department of Education and the U.S. General Services Administration, will be launching a comprehensive review of Columbia University's federal contracts and grants in light of ongoing investigations for potential violations of Title VI of the Civil Rights Act over allegations of anti-Semitism related to pro-Palestine protests. So, and then Kennedy put out this statement is kind of mind-boggling how ridiculous it is. I'm just going to read the whole thing that he said. It's unbelievable. So Kennedy said, quote, anti-Semitism, like racism, is a spiritual and moral malady that sickens societies and kills people with lethalities comparable to history's most deadly plagues. In recent years, the censorship and false narratives of woke cancel culture have transformed our great universities into greenhouses for this deadly and virulent pestilence. Making America healthy means building communities of trust and mutual respect based on speech, freedom, and open debate. End quote. I mean, it's just so absurd. I read it like 20 times. Saying that they have to build communities based on speech, freedom, and open debate by cracking down on criticism of one particular country. Again, it's just, I don't even know. I'm like at a loss of words of how ridiculous this is. And what does this have anything to do with making America healthy again, or whatever your movement is now? And, you know, it's just, again, it's just so ridiculous. I just can't get over that statement. It's just completely crazy. So then last week, this is something that I meant to cover. Leo Terrell, he's an attorney leading the Department of Justice's task force to combat anti-Semitism. He vowed that he would put Hamas supporters in jail. And when they call them Hamas supporters, I get called a Hamas supporter all the time because I oppose aid to Israel. I'm not a Hamas supporter, but that's the smear. And they're saying that they're going to put Hamas supporters in jail. And Terrell's task force, which was created by this executive order signed by President Trump, is out there right now investigating incidents that happen at college campuses. They're visiting 10 college campuses. Terrell said, quote, and this is an interview that he did with Israeli media. He said, quote, "When you see universities start losing millions of dollars in federal funding, you're going to see a change in their behavior. When you see court orders protecting Jewish students, visas of anti-Semitic students being revoked, you will see a major change," end quote. And another thing to be really concerned about here, back in 2019, so in Trump's first administration, Trump signed an executive order directing all executive departments, which would include the DOJ, to consider the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance's definition of anti-Semitism and the organization's lists of examples of contemporary anti-Semitism when enforcing Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. And that's what these investigations are based on, saying this is discrimination, basically hate crimes. And this definition of anti-Semitism, they have these examples of what they call contemporary anti-Semitism, and that includes drawing comparisons of Israeli policy to that of the Nazis. So comparing the modern state of Israel to the Nazis, that's anti-Semitic, apparently, according to this definition. And it says applying double standards to Israel by requiring of it a behavior not expected or demanded of any other democratic nation is anti-Semitism, and denying the Jewish people their right to self-determination by claiming that the existence of the state of Israel is a racist endeavor. So this is what these guys, this task force is out there trying to arrest people based on this definition. Now, I don't think legally that this is really like the official definition that they can use, but they've been directed to reference it. So again, very concerning, a crackdown on the free speech, First Amendment rights of Americans on behalf of Israel, on behalf of a foreign nation.